Welcome everybody. And it's just, Ashley, this is really an honor to get to do this with you this evening. Ashley asked me to participate with him on one of his sessions. It's been a big part of the Jazz House that we always consider the roots of this music and make sure we talk about the relevancy of the roots of this music from a historical, cultural, societal, economic, musical perspective. And so he's been with us for a while doing this, but we're really starting to kick that up. And what's interesting is this platform now of being virtual, we can have that conversation with so many more people. So I welcome everybody that is online this evening. And we are going to go into an evening of discovery. We hope that you will discover something that you hadn't thought of, maybe an artist you didn't know. And it's for those of you who are familiar with the four tremendous voices that we are going to talk about today. We will revisit them.
Melissa, should I start sharing the screen?
And you certainly can.
Okay,
And just good to see you all.
let's do that.
And Ashley, thank you for putting this together. And
Of course.
I want to just set it us up for you a moment. And you guys, we're in a very historic time. I certainly don't need to tell anyone who is on this line today. Perhaps some of you are getting your first nights of full sleep. Perhaps some of you are not getting sleep yet. But we are going to rediscover reclaiming identity. There's a lot going on in this world about what identity is. Who gets to name your identity? Who gets to decide who you are? What stage you get to belong on? We talk a lot about that at the Jazz House, the being on stage, off the stage, but who gets to elevate you to actually having your own voice? These are four women who had their own voice, and they brought us a lot of joy, and their legacy is forever sealed. But tonight's discussion in general, in particular, is going to be at the backdrop of the tour de force song of Nina Simone, which is almost like a mini opera called The Four Women. And really, the African American female archetype that we're going to talk about today, you guys, is one that is over 400 years. And for many African American women, it is one that they did not choose, one that has often been defined for them. And Nina Simone's song, which you will hear and discover, really talks about four of these archetypes that African American women have been saddled with for the entire history in America. And we can ask the question if it's still relevant today. And I would submit to you that it is. And that the history that we even saw this weekend is living proof of this long trajectory that we have been a part of. So tonight we're going to explore the song, their message, but who they are, their physical presence. And their voice. So I just would like us to move forward and let's just take a look at a glimpse of what 400 years looks like with this next slide. So, do you know who that is? That happens to be the 48 vice presidents of the United States. That's what they look like up until about 11:19 this past Saturday. That's who was our leadership. That's our voice. That's what we expected to see when we voted for a vice president into office. At 11:20, that's the new vice president. And I love the next one. But you stay here for a second. That's a powerful slide to really look at. I spent a lot of time just staring at that and looking at our new Vice President-elect, Kamala Harris. Would we have ever thought that was imaginable? And that's what we're going to look at. So since that office came into existence in 1789, there she is, Madam Vice President. I think she looks very vice presidential. When we think about the song that we're going to play for you right now, and to the backdrop of 1966, I want to give you something to think about. Again, when you think about, and what's important to note, 1966, I think Kamala was vice president-elect, was born in 1964. 2 years before this song, she was 2. And I want you to think about this reality that in 1966, well, in 1963, we had the assassination of John F. Kennedy. In 64, you had the Civil Rights Act. In 65, you had the Voting Rights Act. In 65, you had the assassination of Malcolm X. And in 66, you had the formation of the Black Panther Party. And this is 2 years, this song for women. This is 2 years before the assassination of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. So if you think about all that converging, you understand Nina Simone. And with that, let's take it away with that, to listen to the great. And Ashley, you want to set it up? Anything else?
Yeah, no, you did a great job of framing this. Obviously, what we did was we started with the seed of an idea. We wanted to do something that was relevant to the politics of today, obviously. We did not know how the election was going to turn out. We did not know what was going to happen between 11:19 and 11:20 on Saturday. But often, the headlines and the current relevancy of music is just delivered to our doorstep. And so, in making the plans for this presentation today, both myself and Melissa were just, our eyes were like, popping out of our heads, thinking of like how incredibly relevant the idea of discussing African American female roles, the intersectionality between gender and racial considerations today and what they were historically, which is really what the theme is in For Women. And this label, Philips, that was recording Nina and putting out her music in '66, they must have known they had something very important on their hands, because the album title, Wild is the Wind, which is also another tune that's on the album, is actually smaller than the name of the lead track, which is actually the second track on the album from 1966, For Women. It's obviously an original tune by Nina. It meant a lot to Nina, and it's a doorway. Whether you're a student who's just getting started in the music, or whether you're someone who has been around and has had the kind of experience. Gallo, I need to mute those mics if you can. Thanks. I'm getting people's microphone noise. Thank you. But the idea that this connection between the music and the depth of stories and experience that it suggests is an invitation to explore, to study, and to learn more. The whole reason for us doing this evening is really to present a doorway to experience and knowledge that hopefully all of you will continue to pursue. We just have enough time this evening to present some great music, the lives of 4 incredible singers, and the framework that we developed around it was thank you to Nina Simone, this incredible tune that she recorded in 1966. So I'm going to get started with For Women, and this slide, which will track through the tune as we hear it. You will see the lyric, and then you will see some images of black female roles, African American women, and the roles that have been sort of both, as Melissa put it, implanted as well as kind of manipulated by different leading black women within this historical context. There's going to be some images that are, very unfortunate and reflect our racist kind of society, but also some images of women who transcended these roles that Nina Simone defines within the four women within the song.
Ash,
So we're
if we begin, we're going to leave a few moments after before we move to the next singer to give some conversation. Let's leave a few of those surprises for them to discover them, because what you've put together is really powerful. So if we just, let's let them experience the moment of just kind of seeing these four women.
okay. Enough frame, enough introduction. Here we go with the music.
Ashley, you really pulled it all together. I mean, that New Yorker up to Michelle Obama, Ida B. Wells, and all of the elements, you really see how coming together from the moment that we all experienced this past weekend, it comes into play in terms of the road that has been traveled. And one of the things that I think we'd like to do is to get just some early um, early comments from our group right after you kind of give us a sense of those were real images from real experiences, and then we'd like to open it up for a few minutes of discussion and just really hear from you. You've experienced the world we live in today, and really the movement that has underscored the journey for Nina Simone to have spoken at that time that still resonates in many ways today. But actually share with us kind of what we were looking at on these various slides that you put together. Oops, you're muted.
Unfortunately, when I share my screen, I don't have a cursor anymore, and and sometimes it shows up and sometimes it doesn't. That's the only drawback that I have not been able to work out on Zoom. But anyway, the whole idea is both a negative and positive kind of cliches and tropes that have played in historically. And I wanted to identify some of the images because they were kind of flying by during the duration of the tune, and how it's kind of necessary, I think, to if you want to really appreciate this topic that we're diving into, to understand some of the primary actors, black women who have been leaders in their own right in one fashion or another, whether it's a Dorothy Dandridge or a Josephine Baker or Hattie McDaniel, Ida B. Wells, who was one of the first female black journalists and lawyers and activists to come out of the 1800s, who dealt with intersectionality even before there was a term for that. Angela Davis, of course, and Michelle Obama, who was portrayed. So, I mean, that's basically the New Yorker making fun of how a lot of right-wing America wanted to look at the Obamas, at that point in time when they were in office, when Barack was in office. In any case, the idea that our Imitation of Life, which is a incredible movie from Hollywood in the 1930s, that discusses the idea of passing white. That's mother and daughter looking at each other in that image, and what it was like to.
That, of course, is Safrania.
Which came out of the Sophronia thing, but how incredibly accurate Nina Simone was in developing this idea within a song structure, the idea of using a song, the frame of a song, the foundation of a tune, with which to express some very sophisticated and deeply entrenched ideas about American culture, American society, and this ongoing idea of the identity and roles that are offered to black women through history, and what groundbreaking women like Dorothy, like Josephine, like Angela have been able to do in manipulating these roles. So I just wanted to once again give you some doorways here of, if you want to study this further, any of these women are worthy of study and worthy of understanding further.
And you have one more
I believe I
slide.
do. Let me just find where my cursor is.
But if I could, I would like to.
Oh, right.
You do
And
have it very good.
right. And just if you are intrigued, if we've whetted your intellectual appetite for knowing more, I cannot recommend these two books highly enough as just a sort of first step towards understanding what this history and legacy that Nina was pointing towards with the tune For Women. Angela Davis's incredible treatise on the music, the intersection between the music and politics and black feminism. That the second chapter, which just focuses on Billie Holiday's love songs, that should be enshrined in museums everywhere. I mean, it should be something that every academic pursuit is required to read. And as far as an overview that offers the incredible tapestry of experiences as far as black women go, from the founding of this country till now, A Black Women's History of the United States by Dinah Ramey Berry and Kaylee Nicole Gross is incredible.
If I don't know if it's possible to come out of this for a moment, and then we're going to just open up the floor for a few moments if anybody wants to open their mic. I don't know if you can come out of that.
You mean and go into a
so
gallery
we can see
view?
the audience.
Yeah.
We can
Well,
see our
if I
guests.
could, again, it
There you
yeah,
go.
I think I did it.
You
Yay!
did it perfectly. And I actually want to submit. Watch, and let's pay close attention as we watch the commentary over the next 4 years that will come to the way of the vice president, and be mindful, because believe you me, these stereotypes, particularly of Peaches, of the more militant, we will see, because they are still here. So is there anybody, I think, that would like to make a comment or ask a question? Janet, just unmute your mic. Good to see you, Janet. You want to unmute your mic there?
Okay.
I just want to introduce our board member and part of the Jazz House for many, many years, part of our Given Instrument program for over 10 years, Janet Shapiro, and one of the leading people making sure all of our videos look super great. Come on, Janet, your question.
Okay. Well, I have a question, and if there's time, I have a comment. But the question is actually based on what you just referred to, Peaches. I never understood Peaches. I've known that song for decades, and I have never understood why the choice of Peaches as the name for the militant, the militant woman. And please enlighten me.
Ashley, you want to take that one? Certainly, the image of, well, first of all, the image of power and patriarchy and that of women has been at the basis of women's equality and the role of women in this country, forever. So the story of Peaches, do you have that answer?
Is that my cue?
Yeah, that is actually.
Well, I would just offer this, that, and I have looked through many interviews with Nina, and no one ever asked her that. And Janet, absolutely, I want to know is, why is the angriest and the roughest and the most, in your
Sweetest name.
face, woman of the four women, why is she named with the most kind of like
Delicate.
yeah, delicate kind of name. There's definitely an emotional journey that Nina takes through the song. From the sort of, it's almost a very tired and defeated character. That Aunt Sarah is, and then there's the seductive, sweet thing. And then you get to the incredible anger and outrage of the very last, and that's what she ends with. Even the chords that she's playing almost has a sort of musical theater, aspect to it. Also, by the way, notice that her musicality is very much kept to a lower level in this tune. This tune is meant to convey the words and the message of it. It's there's no solo in it. There's little piano breaks between one kind of chapter, if you will, and another. But when she gets to Peaches, I mean, that's what she wants to end with. And I think there's something about that dichotomy of, like, my name might be Peaches,
Yes. Well, and
but
let me just add to that. And actually, I actually see that coming through in one of the comments. You can look at these as four separate archetypes of Black women. But truthfully, when I look at it and I actually see that Chineri, if I'm saying that correctly, that I really almost see there are three. And when you have lived through those, that definition of who you are in those, you are angry. You are angry. It is not just over here. It is actually the continuum for which you are in, the box that you are in, the displacement both in the civil rights movement and in the women's movement. And so you are, and I want to, and I like that comment, because she is very angry that despite the sexy images society wants to assign her, that that's a good question. That's exactly why Peaches, she is angry. So it's not as if there's these three people and anger. No, because of that reality. And if you listen over and over to the song, you really get that at the end. I feel that Nina is saying, if you live through this reality of who your identity can be, you will end up being Peaches as well. And I want to move. Wait, maybe is there one more question? Because we're going to move to the next one, because we're going to leave some time.
Can I say something?
Yes, Wendy. This is Wendy, parent and a great singer,
Hi.
part of the Jazz House.
So, I grew up in the South, and, Peaches is an endearing name. That's like a disarming name. When you hear Peaches, automatically you think of something sweet and, and so full of, love. So I think using that name at the end, you feel the militant, because yes, you're militant, but you are also sweet and endearing. And I think it's a disarming way, to end a song with a sweet, name like Peaches. That's how I look at it. I've looked at it like that.
Yes.
So I kind of feel like, oh, like I feel like my name is Peaches, but yeah, I get it. But yeah, I get it. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just me.
Or yes, I might have to be sweet, but really behind that, this is how I feel. Yeah. Hi from Pittsburgh. Good to see you, and thank you for your comment as well. Peaches in the hood, not really delicate. Some of these great comments, keep them coming. Can we set up? That moves us along to really the incredible Etta James and Rhythm, this beautiful woman. Again, this you know, just again, physically looking at her is interesting. Um, she is a tremendous rhythm and blues singer and balladeer, and hopefully you have born in 1938. She passed away in 2012, actually. So I hope someone I never got to sit in her audience, but love her music. And for those of you who you can wave your hand and give us a reaction, if you've never listened to the music of this great woman, you know, you can always give us a reaction. But we are going to introduce her today to you. And there's an interesting story about that. Do you want to say a couple words about Etta?
Yeah, I mean,
Obviously, and I'll chime in about the song, but
I just want to say that one of the things that we gave ourselves, this kind of frame of the four women, obviously one of them was Nina, and we also wanted to find other singers who kind of defined a role but also pushed against a role that was assigned to them. Around the same time period, the 50s, 60s, etc., and who had music that really had a kind of a social purpose that addressed social concerns in a certain way. And this idea of Etta James being both an R&B singer, but also whose vocal chops were so on point that she did a very credible, one of my favorite Billie Holiday tribute albums was done by Etta James in the 80s. Very long-standing career, who, you know, also was someone who was very unapologetic in her sexuality. If you had ever caught her show, and I caught multiple shows of Etta James over the years, she loved to express what, you know, who she was as a red-blooded woman who was looking for satisfaction from her man, and was not going to be apologetic about it, you know. And Etta's as a person and a character, she was who she was both on stage and off. Very strong-willed, very you know, and a voice to match.
also I think what's important to see is that her identity that she claimed is of this light-skinned woman wearing um, this blonde wig, wig, or that was her persona that she carried throughout. This beautiful woman, again challenging the thought of who can be beautiful, what beauty is. I'm going to play with the image of this blonde paradigm that she did so well. Also, of course, as a blues singer, rhythm and blues, but playing in the blues, that was very much, that music also had that edge to it of sexuality. Sometimes, you know, you could, they could wail on Sunday, but get ready for Saturday night. I think, and then again, you know, that's kind of going in between the Safrania and Sweet Thing, but she totally owned that within herself. I think what's interesting that she was such a powerhouse that I think it was like in 1993, she was voted into the inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So here's this woman that not only um, reclaimed her identity and took her identity, but then also moved all the way over, not only to blues and rock and roll, obviously are kissing cousins, but would be revered as one of the greatest singers of all time, and of rhythm and blues. And you know, you guys, I think many of you may have seen that we chose At Last. You know, she had a number of hits, but probably this would be one, if not the most famous, but certainly one of the most famous songs of her. This great ballad called At Last. It's interesting, and this comes within the genre of music, that a song may exist for a while, and then there is a song that an artist owns. She owns At Last. Even though it has been performed by many other singers, Celine Dion, and others, and jazz singers. Every jazz singer has to learn how to sing At Last. You're just going to do it. You can't get through a wedding if you don't know At Last. But I also wanted to say about this song, what's interesting is that check out, you guys, At Last in the 40s with the Glenn Miller Orchestra. It was a very popular song at that time, but check it out and you will see how far she has taken this song, that was a very important song during wartime, and where she took it. You've got another interesting, we're going to listen to it now.
Yeah, if we're ready.
And then we'll come back and kind of talk about it. But her, check out her, really her emotional conviction. She's adjectives such as bold and strong and unapologetic and inventiveness with her music.
Well, this is the beginning of soul. This is soul, you know, R&B is like transitioning into soul right now in 1961. You know, there's, as I mentioned, you can really feel how soul was developing into R&B was becoming this almost gospel train gesture, you know, in the 1960s. And of course, Aretha, in just a few years later, would kind of take over, you know, at the throne. But Etta's recitative style, and when I say recitative, half spoken, half sung, this very kind of personal type approach, it's more understated than you would expect, and yet at the same time so modern. I mean, her version of this really could have been recorded last week, and we would have said, perfect, dead on. In 1961, she's predicting a future that we're still dealing with 60 years later. It still sounds like today, and I think that's incredible. She really reinvented this whole song, too, because she gave it other meanings. That the At Last wasn't just, finally my man is back, but, you know, it got applied to many other things, especially in the 1960s, during the height of the civil rights era, into, you know, black power and black empowerment of the late 60s. And, of course, as has already been divulged by both Janet and I cannot see the and Chiniere, you know, she wasn't the one who got to do this in what was a very you know, should I just go ahead and play it, Melissa?
You know, I've got to say, I love seeing that from our astute audience because you know, let me just say one thing before
Sure.
we get to that, because it's still a vein of, when I think of that day, I'm pained in my heart. But you know, that rendition with those strings also really became to define a lot of the soul music that we look at. A lot of these really beautiful, intricate, lush arrangements that we would see. You think about Marvin Gaye, you think about a lot of the music from Motown, et cetera. They would be using these great, beautiful backdrops, but yet would have this really grittiness to it, this earthiness that is in a lot of the music of that era by these artists. So yes, it was. So we do want to talk to you a moment about you know, even before that, you know, Beyonce played Etta James in the film. I think it was called Cadillac Records in 2008.
Cadillac Blues.
Cadillac Blues, sorry.
That's
and
right.
She played Etta James in that, and was quite nervous about taking on such a powerhouse of an artist. And so, of course, this was the tour de force of that movie. And so at the inaugural ball, I think you all will remember, or that they invited Beyonce to perform that at the neighborhood inaugural ball. And they called it a tribute to and a nod to this great singer. But if you recall, at the swearing in of the president, they had the great Aretha Franklin. They didn't have someone come in and do a nod to Aretha Franklin. Nonetheless, as you can imagine, Etta was quite hurt by this. And it did create a bit of a dust up, that she was hurt that she owned this song. She owned this song, and she was alive and well to do it. So, but check this out. Well,
a little flavor of it there, not the whole thing.
So I just and we'll also open it up for a question or two or comment. That not only did she perform, it's like getting her to sing respect. I mean, not only did she perform this anthem that she owned, they used the arrangement of it. So yes, you are absolutely right that she let it be known that she wasn't thrilled at her passing. Christina Aguilera sang at last at her funeral. And it has been a part of her repertoire, as actually even Beyonce has made it part of hers at times. Um, One of the things we didn't really talk about, Ashley, is that Etta was actually a gospel prodigy, and singing as a child, at age, I think, 5 and 6 years old, that she was out there. And so I think that, and she had a nickname of, you know what her nickname was?
You're going to tell me.
Peaches.
Oh, that's right. That's right. In
nickname.
fact, I think there's a Chess Records album
Yes.
called Peaches. That's right.
Yeah.
So it all fits together. There are no coincidences.
Exactly. So with that, let's open up the screen for a second. Is there a touching scene in Northern Exposure? Janet,
I think it's been used in a lot of films, but the meaning, the ultimate meaning of this song, the way that Respect became a song that wasn't just about a woman and a man, but about women in general, or Black America in general, at last, in this context, being played as the very first song with, the Obamas dancing to it. How can you not feel what it's really saying, and the idea of an African American president, here in America, at last has a whole huge universal meaning that, was not there when Glenn Miller was doing it. That's for sure.
Great songs, though, often, I think we have seen this through the pandemic, that great songs and that we listen in performances actually take on the meaning of the moment. And I think that is, again, the endearing quality of what music is, right? So you, the listener, if you're having a hard day and you put something on, and then you have a great day and put that same piece of music on. And I think that's why music is so personal to everyone. And so, like you said, an artist, not only can they put new meaning on it, but the listener can also take those experiences. If we just open up the screen for a second, let's just see if anybody wants to jump in and comment. Good to got some new faces. Good to see you guys. And we're joined, Vincent, it's great to see you. We're joined by the Rutgers Jazz Institute joining us this evening. And of course, I love how some of our students are sitting here. Sam Koenig over here, never goes far without his instrument sitting right with him. But is there a comment? Somebody want to raise a hand? Anybody want to make another observation to that? Is there anybody who Etta James is new is a new artist that they are discovering tonight, because I love that.
There's so much to discover about Etta James too. So many different chapters to her story.
Did we get a few hands raised on that one? It's always hard on this Zoom to try to see everybody.
I know.
So
Ben Fig put up a smile or some sort of.
Oh, there you go. So yeah. Ben, absolutely. Check her out. And some of her other hits, you guys. All I Could Do Is Cry. I'd Rather Go Blind. Good Rockin' Daddy. Tell Mama. I mean, you just check out this music of hers. And again, All I Could Do Is Cry, I'd Rather Go Blind, Good Rockin' Daddy, and Tell Mama are just some of the hits that she is known for. And there's some tremendous performances on YouTube that you can really check out and see her live.
Yeah. Like Aretha, she had many different kind of pathways that she went down stylistically. Rock tunes that she interpreted, R&B tunes, and then, like I mentioned, the Billie Holiday tribute album where she, had such incredible support on that album and killed it. Right. Just,
And like I think her roots in the church really began to define. And isn't that interesting? I always think of that when you listen to Ray Charles. If you listen to him, you're not sure if you listen to Sunday or Saturday. You know what I mean? If you're,
right.
You're in a jig joint or you're at the Baptist church or something. Again, that's where she comes from, and she sang really right up until the end and performed of her life, and certainly is one of the greatest.
All right.
Wow. Next up, we are going to discover an artist or rediscover an artist whose career and artistry as an artist really spans many areas. Obviously, we know and love Abbey Lincoln, of course, as a singer, a tremendous composer. There is a songbook of hers that has, it's really hard to just pick your favorites. She's an actor, some tremendous performances that we actually, I think, going to show you one of them. She made dolls. She was a poet. She was a full artist who crossed over, and I think many people felt she was a griot, of great wisdom and depth. And she is a woman who reclaimed her identity through her whole life. She had and we're going to kind of see the journey of her life. She's a beautiful woman. And so there was a stereotype of who she was going to be. And again, we will visit Safrania in her early days. She saw that coming. She actually talked about how she felt that she was going to become ill if she continued in the vein of how the industry, both Hollywood and the music industry, saw her. And she made a concerted effort to reclaim her identity as she began in the 60s to understand that. And so we're going to take a look at this incredible artist, and we'll talk more about her.
Yeah, the tune that we're going to use to kind of open the door into the Abbey Lincoln saga. And Abbey is incredible. I mean, she really was born to be a performer of many sorts, as Melissa mentioned, in the 50s. But there was a very limited role that African American women as singers could kind of pursue at that point. There was, folk singers, blues singers, etc. But really, if you wanted to go to the top of the mountain at that point in time, it was you had to be putting on that cocktail dress and singing the cabaret songs in a cabaret setting. And that continues into the early 60s. And even someone like Aretha was following that path and trying to make it. And that's what Abby was doing. Abby had a head start. She famously posed in a dress that fit her perfectly, that had been Marilyn Monroe's in a movie, and that she's not wearing it in one of these photos, but that was the path that she was on. But she, as Melissa mentioned, by the end of the 50s, around 58, 59, she starts to change her perspective on things, her role as a singer, and even her singing style. And the way she starts bringing in a much more aggressive, almost like a Peaches kind of anger into her voice. And she starts playing with the idea of screams and more guttural effects, and also taking on the voice of different roles of characters within the song structure. And the tune we're going to hear actually is it's the opening track from We Insist, from 1960, which of course was put together by her husband at the time, Max Roach, along with Oscar Brown Jr. And the two of them were working on the idea of an album that was both musical and protest driven, and the idea of kind of trying to define the African American experience, the whole history, within an album context. And the first tune is Drive a Man, and as we'll hear, you can really hear how Abby's voice and what she's doing with her voice has changed from a sort of cabaret approach. If we had time, we could do an A and B comparison. But
and again, remember the backdrop of none of this happens in a vacuum, and I think that's what's so essential about this music and about what we're talking with jazz, that it didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened in the backdrop of what was happening in the civil rights movement, and they were certainly at the forefront of from an artist standpoint, from the civil rights movement. So I think that's, they helped move that along in the ideals of that movement. So this is, and the Freedom Suite now and the collaboration with Max and Abby is one of the greatest pairings of all times that we have. We're gonna, on Candide Records. All right, you play that one?
Here we go. Wow.
Wow. You know, in the 60s, she was a bona fide star. And actually, when she married Max Roach, it didn't say Max Roach marries Abby Lincoln. It says Abby Lincoln marries Max Roach, takes a husband. And I think that she also talks a lot in later life. I got to meet her and see her many times. Matter of fact, I covered a couple of her songs, and one time, I wish I'd kept the message. She actually called my cell phone to tell me how much she loved one of the renditions of one of her pieces. When I called her back, and she left me her home number. When I called her back, I had a very different Abby. She wasn't happy to hear from me at that time. And she was, that was very much Abby, she was very much in the moment. She was very truthful to how she felt. But I do want to say that when you look through and when they talk about the body of her music and when you listen to her own songs, you'll see a woman who didn't spend a lot of time talking about love. She talked about life, and she talked about the relationships. She talked about the journey, and she actually talks about that she felt that was what she was there for. I want to actually just say a couple of things that are in the chat. Vincent, I really like the fact that you're telling us from the Jazz Studies Institute that Abby Lincoln collection is there, and one of the archivists found an unpublished autobiography in the collection. I got to go check that out. But there's also something in here that says that Max Roach really encouraged her to break that stereotype. There are interviews of her, and whether or not how true that is, but she said, no, I was on that journey with or without him. And I think there was a lot of thought that he moved her in that direction. Well, maybe perhaps later in life as she reflected, but that's not necessarily how she thought about her life. She actually feels that that was a personal transformation and revolution. I just want to kind of mention that. Will you just play that? Because we're going to move on to our next.
Yeah, we have a little clip from a movie, For Love of Ivy, that is kind of Hollywood in 1968 trying to, if you see this movie, and it's worth seeing, you know, it's trying to grapple with like race issues and generational gaps and how America was kind of dividing along all sorts of lines of separation, not unlike today. But it's a movie that, in a Hollywood fashion, is trying to grapple with it. And at the center of the story is Abby Lincoln playing a maid, sort of Aunt Sarah, you know, continuing in that role, named Ivy. And she's, and her co-star is, of course, Sidney Poitier. So that's the level she was at that point. And here's just a little moment. I love that moment in the movie. One thing I discovered, Melissa, check this out. Do you see what's in his record collection?
No, I didn't. No.
I think Vincent and Wayne, if they're here from IJS, that's some Impulse stuff there.
You're right.
The orange and black, and you know right away.
You know right away that's Impulse. So he, you know, Carol Connor, you know, the male, the white guy there with the drink in his hand, obviously he was into some Coltrane, and who knows, maybe the Max Roach album that Abby is on Impulse is here too.
Well, and the way she delivered that is so Abby. And when you saw her live and in her music, the way she said no, the way she held the ground, that is Abby Lincoln to a T. And so back in '68, she really was, you know, I don't want to say fully formed because I think we evolve as people, but that's who she was, you know, at her core. She left music for a long time, you know, you guys. She was out of the spotlight, and then came back. Not unlike some of our other great artists, Shirley Horn, Sonny Rollins. You know, she left for some time. Check out Nothing But a Man. She was also in Mission Impossible. You know, but again, a bona fide star. You know, in the '60s. So just a lot of music there to check out. You know, listen, thank you, Ashley, for bringing that to bear. We are going to, because there were so many comments that we addressed in here, we're going to move to the great Betty Carter. And what I think is so interesting to end with Betty Carter is that, I don't know if anybody else at the show at, is that CBGB's? What was the, you know, with Betty Carter and Abby Lincoln? I went both nights. Who was there? Oh my gosh, to see these two.
When and where was this?
It was in the city. You gotta check that out.
Was this like the bottom line or something?
7th Avenue on the left, right before the tunnel. What was that club called?
7th Avenue before the tunnel.
You know, so you're going down past the Vanguard, boom.
That's where the half note used to be in that area.
No, Christian would know that. They did a incredible night of music. They were rivaling, but it was pretty amazing on stage. So Betty Bebop
City Winery.
No. But hang on, I'll have it by the end of
in that area. Okay.
I'll share it with you.
Okay.
But you know, Betty Bebop Carter. Talk about this woman. I got to know her a little bit, and personally, and sit in her night. and I know many of you as well. But tell us about her, because she was not necessarily. I asked Christian this, who knew and recorded a lot with her, a political. I don't even want to use the word politics, but she was not in that conversation in the way that Abby Lincoln in the civil rights movement, they were absolutely in that conversation. Nina Simone, these people were in the forefront. But her person, how she claimed who she was, her physicality, the music, the power. She was not a demure person as an artist, and she was this powerhouse, this band leader like we've never seen before. So she, in her own right, um, really was. This is who Betty Carter is. I mean, she even had an album that it's not about the melody. Like, she redefined and defined how she was going to be seen in her music and as a leader of her band. So what are we going to listen to with the great Betty Carter?
Well, I would just add to it that she was, political is not always just something that is spoken, but how you carry yourself and the role that you take upon, yourself is something that Betty was probably more so than any of the other artists we've discussed tonight, is a woman who broke gender boundaries as far as starting her own record label, running her own band to the level that the Betty Carter experience. If you went through a Betty Carter's band, especially in the late '60s up through the '80s and '90s, it was on the same level as like an Art Blakey or a Miles Davis. She was training future headliners. She was training future veterans that we revere today. And if you look at the list of artists who went through the Betty Carter band, we're talking about people who are leaders today, much like what Miles and Art were able to do. Also, what she did in kind of reinventing herself, taking her away from that kind of cutie pie, coquettish approach to doing standards, but hanging on to the standards and reinventing them in a very kind of both a unique way technically in her or stylistically, but also in the way that she kind of found new meaning in a song like a Cole Porter tune, Most Gentlemen Don't Like Love. And what she does with this tune totally reinvents it, and it could be a theme for the Me Too movement today, as far as asserting a very womanly approach to the whole question of sex and attraction and how to handle it. And her interpretation of the song is for the ages. As far as and it kind of returns us back to a kind of more straight ahead sound jazz wise, but the levels of meaning and import in this is just incredible. And of course, there's her vocal style, which is unlike anyone else.
Unlike.
And this is on her album from it's not 1960. Vincent, I'm going to lean on you to help me out with the right year. And there you go. Betty Carter from 1976. Pardon the little error there, but that's with John Hicks on piano. It's so beautiful to hear Betty from any time in her career.
Betty, you will hear her music also. Go back to Betty for a second. You'll hear Betty's music and you'll think about the great trios that she had, and of course John Hicks is one of those great trios. Often we talk about, and there's a lot of discussion, a lot about Art Blakey and all the artists that have come through Art Blakey, but you really said it right, that that Betty was known for this. Matter of fact, there's there's still the Betty Carter. People are going through kind of the Betty. What's it called? Betty Carter's
Institute.
University.
No,
well, yeah, that's what they
Carter
often said. The Kennedy Center, does, and BAM really still has her program that she had of this young mentoring. She found
Oh, right.
she really felt strongly about that.
Jazz Ahead,
Jazz
the educational campaign that she's, or initiative that she
because
started.
she really recognized that was her calling in many ways, to bring out these young artists. And it's always great to hear from Hutch and the artists that have been in her bands over time. Christian just literally missed being, because he talks about it often, how he missed the call. Well, he was supposed to take the call and get in the band, and she went and filled those shoes. But I think when you really listen to her as an artist, check out the way she can phrase like that. What we just heard is often what we hear with her, these hard driving songs, really hard swinging music, but really check her out with a ballad. And
Yeah.
a singer like Jasmine Horn, when I hear her today, I really feel the presence of someone like Betty Carter. But the way she could handle a ballad, and it could be so slow, like you would expect to hear Shirley Horn, but then she can be so driving, like Freddie Hubbard would be driving, and she was all of that. She also told me once that if you wanted to be an artist at the caliber and try to approach the artists that we're looking at the page, you have to be willing to sleep under your piano, that you have to be willing to do it at all costs. And she put everything into her, I think, into her artistry. We owe a lot to her. When she passed, I think the music, particularly for singers, just felt like there was this huge hole that was left. And Betty, was born in 1929 and died and passed away in 1998, I think it was. But so
I wanted to just show the photos of our four women in later years, when they were still relevant, still active, still making great music happen, and so vibrant, and how they took care of themselves to a point where they could carry forward into their later years, and they were on stage till the very end. They were giving of themselves and giving themselves to the music and sharing it with us. And I love that. I love that, the music carried them all the way through to a point where they weren't languishing somewhere. They were making music to the very end, all four of them.
I think in just, bringing it kind of full circle, I think these four women really, for a legacy for Black women that we really saw and visited in Four Women, where they've been defined by many events not in their control, and have been confined. And even when they break free of that, are still being defined or being looked at in that paradigm that I think that we set up, that Nina set up so poetically for us. But really, these women had the self-confidence and they had the courage to really step free and define themselves. And I love looking at them, as fully formed and fully confident women. And I think it is their music and their artistry have paved the way for, all of us to think about claiming our identity. And, going back to, I think, Kamala Harris, I just find that she sits upon these shoulders as well, and in stepping forward. And so what a great time, Ashley, to spend some time with you. And we've got a few moments, but it has been fun to kind of muse over this, because I think that it's so relevant to today. And I think when someone says to us, Ted, and they say, "Oh, where's jazz going? Is jazz relevant?" I'm like, "Well, are you awake? Jazz is living and it is breathing and it is making history every moment and is creating." So I can't, because we've just taken a journey through the lives of these four women, and looking at them today,
Yeah.
I feel like they could be right here with us, because in many ways they really
In
are.
many ways, they are. Their music and their approaches echo through the next generations, the generations that have followed since. But what I love about this, and I'm looking at just these albums and these artists, it's not the obvious ones. It's not the Ella and the Sarah and the Billy, etc., that are always mentioned when we talk about jazz singers. And yet these artists, and there's so many others that I would have loved for us to have had time to go into. But what a great beginning for especially for our younger musicians who are tuning in right now. This slide, if you just go and check out those four albums, that's a whole journey in itself. Okay. And I also want to give credit to of course, everyone from Jazz House Kids, but the fact that Institute of Jazz Studies, Vincent and Wayne are with us tonight. Thank you so much. It means so much to have your partnership and support. Guys, if you ever get out to Rutgers, I'm talking post-pandemic, of course, and get a chance to go to the Institute of Jazz Studies, everything you could ever want informationally, the music itself, ways of just sitting there and listening, and of course the staff who are so friendly and so open and so inviting and embracing of anyone who's into jazz. It's at the Dana Library at the Rutgers campus in Newark, and it's so worth a visit. So please plan on going there at some point.
If you guys have, hopefully you've been writing down some of these great albums and songs that we've talked about. I want to also tell you there is a incredible book called "I Put a Spell on You," Nina Simone. Just that's another great read to check out. And I absolutely, yes, Carmen McRae said that the only real jazz singer was Betty Carter. That is also another a duet. You want to see them, Macy Hall.
Oh my God, that duet album of Carmen and Betty.
Burned up the stage.
Yeah.
Also, I think on that, I think Kenny Washington was the drummer on that, and it was also noted that he was one of the great drummers in Betty's band. But hey, let's open it up and free up this screen here.
Okay, give me a second.
What a great time. Thank you, Ashley, Ted, and our team. But we just kind of, any thoughts on it? Any other? Got some listening to do. I really love seeing, Ben, and seeing some of our students on here. Ava, thank you for coming and joining us. That's really super. Gallo, thank you for, being part of this as well. And there you go, Jasper. I mean, we haven't, I love it. These young people have been listening to one session after another, and that's the future of jazz. As Chick Corea says, well, I'm the future of jazz. I'm still alive, and absolutely. But this is the true future of jazz when you look at these young people.
Absolutely. I love that there's this cross-generational thing going on here. But yeah, any questions, any comments before we say goodnight?
Susan,
I want to encourage any of our parents or friends to join in on the conversation. These are community meeting points that for all of us to celebrate and get a deeper kind of look into the music. And so if we want to prioritize our student questions, but also if there's some parents or just friends of the Jazz House that have something to add or something that struck them, we'd love to hear a little bit. We have a couple more minutes for conversation if people want to hang on. So please don't be shy. We're all friendly, and yeah.
We don't bite.
I guess I didn't draw anything.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about Nina Simone's recording of Pirate Jenny, which is like the most angry and horrifying and wonderful vocal recording I think I have ever heard. Now it's a song from a completely different time and place, and the social issues were very, very different. But it's I have never heard pure rage expressed in such fabulous singing as in that particular interpretation of that song. And I wondered whether you had anything to say about that.
Well, do you know what album she does it on?
Yeah, so released in the 60s.
Is it that same album?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's live at Carnegie Hall.
But in 60, like in the 64s and the 60s, mid 60s, right?
I think we should mention that it's it's Bertolt Brecht, right?
No, it's Kurt Weill.
It's Kurt Weill. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Kurt Weill tune that talks about a sort of story of a revenge and comeuppance that a woman who does have a very sort of Aunt Sarah kind of role in this pirate town is going to rise up and kind of do away with a lot of people in a very bloody way, you know. Cecile McLaurin-Salvant did that as in a Carnegie Hall performance just a few months ago. And she did it as part of this all-female group called Artemis that she is sometimes a member of. But she did it exactly because of this idea that it was a commentary not only on, of course, the general racial situation in the 60s in America, but was really kind of a pointed thing of like her performing this tune in Carnegie Hall for the audience that you would expect to see in Carnegie Hall. And for Cecile to take that on and do that tune as well in Carnegie Hall, I'm thinking like maybe October or November of last year, of 2019, was when she did it. And, I mean, my eyes just went like that. It really was the choice of venue, the choice of who she's singing to in the audience, the choice of the tune itself. It was all an incredibly political statement, you know.
Anybody who hasn't heard it, I think, just go on YouTube or wherever and find it.
Yeah.
It's
Pirate Jenny.
Experience.
And very much in that same, but it is very much in the same realm of what she was. This is the woman who did Mississippi Goddamn. This is the woman who was really speaking truth to power, and not necessarily, received by all musicians as, not every musician was a fan of what that she had to have real courage to step out in that way and speak up as she was with truth to power. And I think that's really that through line.
Yeah, I think about that tune, and coming out of music theater, Sweeney Todd is the kind of the more modern kind of analog. You know, it's what Sondheim did with Sweeney Todd. It's almost like taking that character of Pirate Jenny and expanding upon it and doing a whole play, a whole musical, just based on this idea of a homicidal maniac who, had his own reasons for being homicidal.
Awesome. That's one of the great lyrics.
Ashley, I think Vincent had something to add if he wanted. I saw him raise his hand. Vincent,
what?
Did you want to add to the conversation?
Yeah.
Well, the Pirate Jenny thing is interesting. I noticed that she did it as early as 1964 and as late as 1985.
Yeah.
I wonder how much changed in those years. Really, I've never heard the recording. Actually, I must admit.
Well, I love it. Just the top of the lyric. You people can watch while I'm scrubbing these floors, and I'm scrubbing the floors while you're gawking. And maybe you'll tip me, and maybe it'll make you feel swell in this crummy southern town, in this crummy old hotel. But you'll never guess to who you're talking. No, you could never guess to whom you're talking. We'll check out it. Dylan, good to see you, my friend. Thank you for all you do to bring these voices to bear. Any other
I have
Dylan
a
Pramack, you
question.
guys, is runs our vocal program and is one of the great vocalists, arrangers, writers, and what he does with our singers is extraordinary. And
Wendy had a
Jasper, you
question.
know, because some of our instrumentalists are also singers.
Well,
Um,
Melissa, I think
outside Siegel.
I think Melissa had something. Melissa, I think Wendy had something she'd like to add.
Yeah, Wendy.
Can
Thank
I
you.
ask a question? So I was too young for this, but back in the 60s, Etta James made an album called Queen of Soul. And I don't know, did that rival Aretha's title, Queen of Soul? Like, how did they deal with that? You know, two queens of soul, but you know, Etta was always a little combative and a little, you know, out there with things. And you guys, you know anything about that, or it's kind of out there? But
Well, actually, you've done a lot on Aretha.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you pretty much nailed it. You know, there were many artists who were aspiring for that title, but you know, in 2018 when she passed, and I'm talking about Aretha, you know, what did it say in every headline? Go and check the headlines for August of 2018. You know, there was only one Queen of Soul in the end.
Yeah.
But in the 60s, I mean, the idea of soul and it becoming a musical term that really comes out of jazz. I mean, out of the 50s with, you know, Jimmy Smith and Shirley Scott and, you know, different artists using the term soul in the album title. By the 60s, it has become not just a musical term, it's black identity. And it becomes a term of almost life and death, especially during the riots of '67 and '68, with the unrest in the urban centers, you know, with people scrolling, you know, this establishment owned by Soul Brother or Soul Sister, and of course that kind of importance of that connection with the black community, with African American identity, has kind of diffused. But the idea of Aretha being the voice and the consciousness of that era is something that locked into place with her in the 60s and continued, you know, over time. More so than Etta. Etta, I think, was relegated to a brilliant career, and she was a great music maker, but she didn't attain that height that Aretha did.
But I also think it's really important to note, and I think when we talk about artists in their position, you know, I would say there would be no, you know, Aretha Franklin without an Etta James. I mean, you know, she was born, you know, 15, 16 years before her, and I think that construct. Well, first of all, with vocalists not getting along and that image that there can only be one, sometimes is because that was the industry. You know, there's a long time, I got my young singer, I got my old singer, I'm done. I can have 50 million instrumentalists, but I'm done with my two singers. You know, the competition. I think the environment for women. I just talked to a great singer just yesterday who was talking about just having to live in this environment that she still feels is very dominated with patriarchy and is really dominated with your image and how you're supposed to be sweet peaches, even though you have these other things to think about. But I just want to say that the real reality is this is a music of lineage, and this is a music that's passed down. And so, and the real truth is that they really are standing on each other's shoulders,
Yeah.
and each one helps bring the other forward. As and so that's how I really look at it. I think nobody uh, underestimates um, you know, they did a record, put the woman in the Hall of Fame. That, you know, that this woman was singular. Etta James owned, you know, she had her time and she owned it, and that music will last forever. But you know, it's kind of like Whitney Houston. You know, when Whitney Houston came on the stage, you know, there's some incredible singers that kind of receded but that does not make their contribution to this canon of music any less. And so, you know, sometimes there's life before Aretha and life after Aretha, or
Right.
Whitney Houston and before, music before John Coltrane, music after. But
Right.
still, thankfully, I really think that's part of what Jazz House is trying to do. Ted, I think that's what we're trying to do, is really shine a light on this canon, because it is not owned by one or two voices. It is made up of this amazing mosaic of so many artists. And if you take them out, I just think of it like a chessboard. If you take out these people, you would be left with holes. You know, they really are important.